Barron Trump, dressed casually in jeans, a t-shirt, and a red MAGA hat, walked into a trendy downtown restaurant one quiet afternoon. He wasn't there for any political statement. He simply wanted to enjoy a meal after a long day exploring the city. As the youngest son of former President Donald Trump, Barron was used to some level of attention, but he often went unnoticed in casual settings. Today, however, would be different. The restaurant was bustling with chatter, the aroma of gourmet, dishes wafting through the air. Barron approached the hostess stand, politely asking for a table for one. The hostess hesitated, glancing nervously at the hat perched on his head. She seated him quickly, her eyes darting toward the back of the restaurant where the manager stood, watching the interaction unfold. Barron sat quietly, scanning the menu, unaware of the growing tension in the room. The manager, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, strode over to Barron's table. His voice was firm but loud enough to catch the attention of nearby diners. "Excuse me, young man," the manager said, crossing his arms. "We have a dress code here, and that hat is not appropriate." Barron looked up, confused. "Is there something wrong with my hat?" The manager's tone sharpened. "This is a private establishment, and we don't allow political attire that might offend other patrons. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the table. Barron's cheeks flushed, but he remained calm. "I'm just here to eat, not to cause trouble," he replied, his voice steady. "I'll take the hat off if it's an issue." But the manager wasn't satisfied. "It's not just the hat, it's what it represents. We don't welcome that kind of attitude here. Please leave." Barron stood, towering over the manager with his 6'7" frame, but his demeanor remained composed. "All right," he said softly, "if that's how you feel." He walked out without another word, leaving the room buzzing with whispers and murmurs. Some diners were appalled by the manager's behavior. Others silently supported the decision. What happened next was unexpected. Instead of leaving the incident behind, Barron decided to take action. He pulled out his phone, recorded a brief video explaining what had happened, and posted it to social media. His message was calm and devoid of anger. "I understand that not everyone agrees with my family's views, but I believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect. I just wanted a meal, not to make a statement. Let's be kinder to each other." The video went viral within hours, garnering millions of views. People from all walks of life weighed in, with many condemning the manager's actions. The hashtag kindness over politics began trending, urging people to focus on unity rather than division. The restaurant, however, faced a different reality. Negative reviews flooded their social media pages, and calls for boycotts grew louder. The manager, realizing the gravity of the situation, issued a public apology, admitting that his actions had been unfair and unprofessional. He reached out to Barron personally, inviting him back for a meal on the house. Barron responded with grace, declining the offer but wishing the restaurant well. Instead, he donated a generous sum to a local food bank, encouraging his followers to support businesses and causes that promoted inclusivity and kindness. The incident, while initially divisive, sparked a broader conversation about respect and tolerance. Barron's measured response earned him admiration from people across the political spectrum, proving that sometimes the most powerful statements come from acts of quiet dignity. As days passed, the ripple effects of Barron's response continued to spread. News outlets picked up the story, framing it as a rare moment of grace in an often polarized world. Barron, however, remained humble, avoiding interviews and maintaining his stance that the incident wasn't about him, but about fostering understanding. Meanwhile, the restaurant struggled to recover from the backlash. Some of its loyal patrons stopped dining there, while others openly criticized the establishment for mixing business with personal biases. The manager, now facing mounting pressure, decided to take a step back from his role. In a heartfelt statement, he acknowledged his mistake and announced he would dedicate time to reflect and learn from the experience. Barron's actions inspired a movement that extended far beyond social media. Schools and community centers began organizing kindness over politics events, where people from different backgrounds came together to discuss their views in a respectful and open-minded environment. The movement even caught the attention of prominent figures, who applauded the initiative for its focus on bridging divides. One day, while attending a youth leadership summit, Barron was approached by a young girl holding a small handmade sign that read, "Thank you for teaching us kindness." She explained how her school had started a program to encourage students to perform random acts of kindness daily. Barron smiled, moved by how a single moment had sparked so much positivity. Despite the attention, Barron stayed grounded. He continued his studies and focused on his personal growth, occasionally sharing thoughts about unity and understanding on his social media platforms. His quiet but impactful approach inspired many to reconsider how they addressed conflicts in their own lives. As for the restaurant, it underwent a transformation. The new manager, appointed after the previous one's departure, introduced initiatives aimed at rebuilding trust within the community. They hosted charity dinners, supported local causes, and made an effort to create a welcoming environment for everyone. Over time, they regained their footing, thanks in part to patrons who valued the effort to change and grow. Years later, when Barron reflected on the incident, he saw it not as a moment of conflict, but as a catalyst for change. It wasn't about the hat, the restaurant, or even the politics. It was about a lesson that the world seemed to need, that kindness, patience, and understanding have the power to turn even the most divisive situations into opportunities for growth and connection. And in the end, that quiet young man with the red hat had managed to inspire millions, not by shouting louder, but by listening, standing tall, and choosing to respond with grace. As time passed, Barron Trump's influence in promoting unity continued to grow organically. He became a symbol of how a single act of grace could ripple outward, touching countless lives. His social media following grew, not because of his last name, but because people resonated with his message of compassion and understanding. One day, Barron received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from the former restaurant manager. The letter was heartfelt, handwritten, and full of reflection. The man admitted that his reaction to Barron that day had been influenced by personal biases and frustrations, unrelated to the young man in front of him. He shared that the backlash had been a humbling experience, but it also pushed him to confront some uncomfortable truths about himself. "I've started volunteering at a community center," the letter read, "where I work. With people from all walks of life, it's been eye-opening. I'm ashamed of how I treated you, but I'm grateful it led to my own growth. Thank you for showing me grace when I didn't deserve it." Barron was deeply moved. He decided to respond, writing a thoughtful letter back. He encouraged the former manager to keep striving towards self-improvement and thanked him for the courage it took to apologize. Barron ended his letter by saying, "We all make mistakes. It's what we do after that defines who we are. I'm glad to hear you're using this experience to make a positive impact." Their exchange, though private, marked another step in the healing process that the incident had set in motion. It reminded Barron of the importance of forgiveness and the potential for personal transformation in even the most unlikely circumstances. Eventually, Barron's quiet advocacy for kindness began influencing policies and initiatives beyond his immediate circle. A nonprofit organization approached him with a proposal to launch a campaign aimed at fostering civility in public spaces. Dubbed the Unity Project, the campaign included workshops, public service announcements, and community events designed to encourage open dialogue and mutual respect. Barron, hesitant to step into the spotlight, agreed to lend his support on one condition: that the focus remain on the cause, not him. He attended events and engaged with participants, but he remained humble, often crediting the people who were doing the groundwork for the movement's success. Years later, Barron's actions were still cited as a turning point in how people viewed political and social differences. His ability to rise above a personal slight and focus on the bigger picture became a case study in leadership classes and a story parents told their children to teach the value of empathy and resilience. The restaurant incident became a distant memory, but its legacy lived on. The once divisive moment had blossomed into a testament to the power of grace, proving that even in a world often fractured by conflict, bridges could be built, one act of kindness at a time. As the years rolled on, Barron Trump became an unexpected yet steadfast advocate for unity and mutual respect. His commitment to fostering dialogue and kindness without veering into divisiveness inspired countless others to do the same in their communities. The Unity Project expanded globally, hosting events in schools, workplaces, and community centers. These gatherings provided safe spaces for people to share their stories, learn about one another, and address disagreements constructively. One particularly memorable moment came when Barron was invited to speak at an international youth summit in Geneva. Leaders from around the world had gathered to discuss pressing global issues, including polarization and social unrest. Although initially hesitant to accept such a high-profile role, Barron saw it as an opportunity to amplify the message that had grown so close to his heart. Standing at the podium, he spoke with quiet confidence, his words carrying an authenticity that resonated with the audience. "We live in a world where it's easy to be divided," he said, his voice steady. "But division is a choice, just like kindness is a choice. What happened to me at that restaurant could have been just another moment of conflict, but instead, it became a lesson, a reminder that even when we disagree, we can still choose understanding. Let's not let our differences define us. Let them teach us." The speech was met with a standing ovation, not because of any grand rhetoric, but because of its sincerity. It was clear to everyone in the room that Barron wasn't interested in fame or recognition. He simply wanted to make the world a bit more understanding, one conversation at a time. Behind the scenes, Barron continued to prioritize his privacy and personal growth. He pursued a degree in international relations, focusing on conflict resolution and diplomacy. He interned with organizations that work to mediate disputes in war-torn regions, gaining first-hand experience in how small steps toward understanding could prevent larger conflicts. Meanwhile, the restaurant where the initial incident had taken place became something of a local legend. Under its new management, it thrived, not just as a dining spot, but as a symbol of transformation. The staff hosted monthly community nights, where meals were donated to those in need and conversations about unity were encouraged. The restaurant's story was featured in a documentary about businesses that overcame controversy to become forces for good. Barron's quiet influence even began to shift cultural narratives. Pop culture started celebrating stories of reconciliation and understanding, with films, books, and television shows inspired by the message of kindness over politics. Social media platforms, often criticized for fueling division, adopted initiatives that encouraged users to engage in civil discourse, citing Barron's story as a catalyst. Decades later, when Barron was asked to reflect on that pivotal day at the restaurant, he offered a thoughtful response. "It wasn't just about the hat or even me," he said. "It was about how we respond when faced with anger or misunderstanding. The easy choice is to fight back or walk away bitter, but the harder choice, the one that changes things, is to respond with grace. That's what I've tried to live by ever since." By then, Barron's name had become synonymous with resilience, kindness, and leadership. Yet he remained the same person at his core, humble, reflective, and deeply committed to making the world a little brighter, one step at a time. His journey, born from a moment of conflict, became a timeless reminder that even the smallest acts of grace can have an immeasurable impact. As Barron Trump entered his later years, his legacy of kindness and unity continued to grow in ways even he couldn't have foreseen. The Unity Project, which had started as a grassroots initiative, evolved into an international foundation, with chapters in over 50 countries. Its mission expanded beyond promoting dialogue to include programs that addressed systemic issues like inequality, education, and access to resources, bridging divides not only in conversations, but also in opportunities. Barron, now a quiet yet revered figure in global diplomacy, remained deeply involved. Despite his fame, he refused to take a formal leadership role within the foundation, preferring to work behind the scenes. He frequently visited communities, listening to their stories and learning from their experiences. His humility earned him respect from world leaders and everyday people alike. One day, Barron received a letter from a young man in a small town whose story mirrored his own in a striking way. The young man had been asked to leave a local diner because of a political pin he wore. Instead of reacting in anger, he remembered Barron's story and chose to respond calmly. He started a campaign in his town to encourage tolerance, and it quickly gained traction. "You taught me that kindness doesn't mean weakness," the young man wrote. "It's the most powerful choice we can make." Barron carried the letter with him, sharing it occasionally in speeches to remind others of the ripple effect that one person's actions could create. It became a symbol of hope and a testament to the change that could arise from even the smallest gestures. Years later, Barron was honored with a prestigious Global Peace Prize. The ceremony was attended by diplomats, activists, and countless individuals whose lives had been touched by his work. When he took the stage to accept the award, his speech was characteristically simple yet profound. "This award isn't for me," he began. "It's for every person who's ever chosen understanding over anger, grace over revenge, and hope over despair. The world doesn't change because of one person. It changes because of all of us. Together." His words were met with thunderous applause, but Barron's expression remained serene. He wasn't interested in the spotlight. He was interested in the message. In the twilight of his life, Barron's impact was immortalized in books, documentaries, and educational curricula. Schools taught his story as a lesson in empathy and leadership, and the hashtag #kindness over politics remained a rallying cry for unity in times of division. But for Barron, the true measure of his legacy wasn't in the accolades or recognition. It was in the countless acts of kindness he witnessed around the world, acts sparked by a moment that could have been filled with conflict, but was instead met with grace. As he sat in his garden one evening, surrounded by family and friends, Barron reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a young man quietly walking out of a restaurant to a global symbol of understanding, his life had been a testament to the power of choosing kindness. In the end, Barron's story wasn't about politics or fame. It was about humanity, about the bridges we build when we set aside our differences and choose to see the best in one another. And that, he knew, was a legacy that would endure far beyond his lifetime.